It is 2:23 in the afternoon on April 7th, 1945. The East China Sea, roughly 180 miles southwest of Kyushu. A column of smoke climbs 20,000 feet into the gray Pacific sky. Men on American carrier decks, miles distant, stop what they are doing and stare at the horizon. The light comes first. Then the sound, a concussion that arrives in the chest before the ears can name it. It is one of the largest non-nuclear explosions of the entire war. That was the end of an era. December 16th, 1941. 9 days after Pearl Harbor, the Imperial Japanese Navy commissioned the most powerful battleship the world had ever seen. She was 863 feet long. She displaced 71,000 tons. Her 9 main guns were the largest ever mounted on a warship, her armor impervious to anything another surface ship could fire at her. She was named Yamato, after the ancient name for Japan itself. She was meant to be the instrument of final victory. The question is, what lies between December 16th, 1941, and that column of smoke over the East China Sea? That question is the story. Yamato did not announce herself. She was built in secret, so secret that the Japanese public never knew she existed. At the Kure naval arsenal, the shipyard was partially enclosed, draped and shielded. The workers sworn to silence. International treaties capped new warships at 35,000 tons. Yamato displaced more than double that. Her architects worked through 24 separate design plans before arriving at the final one. A ship that had no precedent in the history of naval warfare. The logic behind her was precise. Japan could not outbuild the United States in quantity. America's industrial capacity was an order of magnitude beyond what Japan could sustain. But if Japan could not build more, it could build bigger. One platform so overwhelming that no fleet could withstand it in surface combat. The numbers bore this out. 9 46-centimeter guns, each barrel weighing 147 tons, each capable of hurling a shell the weight of a compact automobile to a target 25 miles away. The turrets themselves weighed more than most destroyers. Armor on the turret faces ran to 26 inches of hardened steel. Her belt armor ran 16 inches thick, angled inward along the hull. She was laid down in 1937, launched in 1940, and when she finally sailed, she carried a crew of more than 3,000 men. When Ensign Mitsuru Yoshida, a 22-year-old radar officer, first reported aboard, the ship's scale defied orientation. Her hull was so massive that even at the top of the command tower, the sea could not be felt moving beneath her. No pitch, no roll, only stillness. The corridors had arrows painted on the walls to indicate the direction of the bow. Without them, a man below decks had no way of knowing which end of the ship he was walking toward. She was not so much a ship as a territory. She was a legend before she ever fired a shot. The Americans had no idea she existed. That changes on December 16th, 1941. Yamato was commissioned into the Imperial Japanese Navy. 9 days after Pearl Harbor. 9 days earlier, carrier-borne aircraft launched from 6 Japanese fleet carriers had destroyed the American battleship force at Pearl Harbor without a single Japanese surface gun firing in anger. Not a battleship, not a cruiser, aircraft. The attack proved, in a single morning, that the decisive weapon of naval warfare in the Pacific would be the airplane, launched from a carrier. Japan proved this. Japan did it to America. And then, 9 days later, Japan commissioned the world's greatest gun platform. The 9 most powerful guns ever mounted on a warship belonged to a ship whose age had already ended before she was launched. For 3 years, Yamato floated. She served as flagship of the combined fleet, too valuable to risk, too powerful to ignore. She moved between Truk and Kure, between the inland sea and the anchorage at Linga Roads. She was present at the Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944. and she played no part in it. The battle was decided by aircraft, as every major engagement of the Pacific War had been. Her guns waited. The surface engagement that would justify them, that would give those 9 turrets a target they were built to destroy, never came. It came, briefly, in October 1944. At the Battle of Leyte Gulf, Yamato's guns finally found enemy surface ships. She fired at American escort carriers and their screening destroyers. Small ships, lightly armed, doing everything they could to delay a force that should have annihilated them in minutes. The engagement was confused, the American defense bewildering in its aggression, and the Japanese force withdrew. It was the only time in the entire war that Yamato fired her main guns at enemy surface targets. Once, briefly, ineffectively, never again. What Leyte Gulf accomplished was the destruction of the Imperial Japanese Navy. 4 carriers, 3 battleships, 6 cruisers, 9 destroyers, gone in 4 days of fighting. What remained by the winter of 1944 was not a fleet. It was a collection of ships without enough fuel to sail freely, without the aircraft or the pilots to provide cover, without the industrial base to replace anything. The combined fleet as a strategic instrument had ceased to exist. The war continued. Spring 1945. The smoke from Tokyo is barely gone. On the night of March 10th, American B-29 superfortresses dropped incendiary bombs on the city, burning 16 square miles of the capital to the ground and killing more than 100,000 people in a single night. The smell of it still moved through the air above the imperial palace. Emperor Hirohito, who could not yet comprehend the scale of what was happening to his empire, believed that one great military victory, one decisive blow, would force the Americans to negotiate. He expected his navy to provide it. On April 1st, American forces landed on Okinawa. The island was 340 miles from Kyushu, the southernmost of Japan's home islands. If it fell, the Americans would have a staging ground for the invasion of the mainland itself. The crisis was total. The question fell on the Naval General Staff, and it was brutally simple. What do you do with the world's largest battleship when you have already lost the war? The answer arrived as Operation Ten-Go. Yamato, the light cruiser Yahagi, and 8 destroyers would sail for Okinawa. The plan was for Yamato to fight through whatever American forces stood in her path, beach herself on the Higuchi roadstead, and use her 9 guns as a land fortress, pounding American positions from the shallows until she was destroyed. Simultaneously, her presence would draw American carriers into range of kamikaze attack. She would serve as both gun platform and bait, surviving long enough to be useful on the beach. The fuel bunkered for the mission was enough to reach Okinawa. It was not enough to return. This was not a combat mission. It was an execution with paperwork attached. The planning meeting was remarkable for one reason. Everyone at the table opposed the mission. Vice Admiral Seiichi Ito, commander of the Second Fleet, the man who would lead the force, refused outright. Rear Admiral Keizo Kimura of Destroyer Squadron 2, Captain Kosaku Ariga commanding Yamato, all 9 of the destroyer captains. None of them believed the mission could succeed. Not because they feared it might fail, because they knew it would. Without fighter cover, Yamato could not reach Okinawa. She would be found in the East China Sea, far from any air support, and she would be sunk. Every officer in the room understood this. Ito was then informed that the Emperor was watching, that the Emperor expected the Navy to act, that to do nothing while Okinawa burned would be a failure of honor. Ito relented. He did not change his assessment of the mission's outcome. He changed nothing except his answer. What he had been told was that duty and survival were no longer the same thing, and that between the two, there was no choice available to a man in his position. That is not cowardice. It is something more complicated and more terrible, the specific tragedy of a man whose judgment was correct and whose obedience was total. The evening of April 6th. The 10 ships formed up and sailed from Ube, stopping to take on fuel at Tokuyama Depot. Captain Tameichi Hara, commanding the light cruiser Yahagi and one of the most decorated surface warfare officers in the Japanese Navy, had been given no illusions about what waited ahead. His was a bitterness with a particular edge to it. A man built for aggressive offense being sent on a mission with no offensive aim whatsoever. Aboard Yamato, officers drank sake in the wardroom. Some wrote final letters. Some wrote death poems. The classical form of goodbye for men who already know they are not returning. There was no panic. The men had made their peace, and there is a particular quality to the quiet of men who are no longer afraid of the worst because the worst is already settled. Yoshida moved through the ship, its corridors, its cavernous spaces, and noted again the complete stillness of a vessel so large the sea could not disturb it. The arrows on the walls, pointing toward the bow, the hum of machinery that sounded nothing like war. 10 ships sailed south into the dark. What those 10 ships did not know could fill the ocean around them. American Signals Intelligence, the Ultra Intercept Program, had identified Operation 10 Go on March 26th, 11 days before Yamato left port. The Joint Intelligence Center Pacific Ocean Area confirmed the execution order on April 5th. The Second Fleet would sail from Tokuyama and pass through the Bungo Strait and arrive at Okinawa on the 8th. Admiral Raymond Spruance, commanding the U.S. Fifth Fleet, had positioned submarines at the southern approaches to the inland sea before the Japanese force was even fully assembled. The submarines, USS Threadfin and Hackleback, were waiting in the Bungo Strait, the only exit from the inland sea, when Yamato cleared it on the evening of April 6th. Threadfin found them almost immediately. 2 large ships, approximately 6 smaller ones. Course and speed reported. Within hours, the entire American command structure at Okinawa knew exactly where Yamato was going, how fast she was traveling, and approximately when she would arrive. The Japanese fleet had been sailing into a prepared ambush since before it moved. Vice Admiral Mark Mitcher, commander of Task Force 58, was a small, weathered man in a long-billed cap who sat on his bridge facing aft to stay out of the wind. He had 15 carriers and 386 aircraft ready to launch. When contact reports from the submarines reached him, his reaction was swift. There was, briefly, a competition. Rear Admiral Morton Deo was already dispatching 6 battleships, 7 cruisers, and 21 destroyers northward to intercept. His superior, Vice Admiral Richmond Kelly Turner, signaled him, "Hope you will bring back a nice fish for breakfast." Deo was composing his reply when the radio brought news that Task Force 58 had already begun launching. Mitcher had read his orders carefully, found the space between their lines, and moved into it. He was airborne before anyone could formally object. Spruance's signal reached the commanders. "You take them on." The Japanese had planned for fighter cover over the fleet between 0600 and 1000 on April 7th. It was the only window in which Japan could put any meaningful air protection over the surface force. The Americans attacked at 12:32 in the afternoon. The window had been closed for 2.5 hours. The sky above the East China Sea that morning was gray and low. Overcast, intermittent rain, visibility restricted. A cloud ceiling of roughly 1,500 feet pressed down over the water. Ensign Harry Jones, flying a TBF Avenger torpedo bomber off USS Hornet, navigated toward the target by radar. The weather made visual contact nearly impossible until the fleet was almost beneath them. The torpedo planes led the approach. They carried the search radar. The conditions complicated everything. They stopped nothing. At 12:32, the first wave found Yamato. Captain Ariga ordered every anti-aircraft gun to open fire simultaneously. The volume was staggering, over 150 barrels throwing shells into the sky, including the 9 main guns themselves, repurposed in extremis, firing Type 3 Beehive anti-aircraft shells that detonated in clouds of shrapnel above the attacking planes. The 9 largest naval guns in the world, each barrel weighing 147 tons, built to destroy enemy battleships at 25 miles, firing upward at aircraft. The spectacle was tremendous. The effect was modest. The Americans came in coordinated waves, Hellcat fighters first, strafing low across the deck to suppress the anti-aircraft crews, Helldiver dive bombers plunging through gaps in the overcast from above. Avenger torpedo planes skimming the wave tops at 200 feet, boring through the curtain of tracer fire to release at close range. In the narrow band between ocean and cloud, dozens of aircraft competed for attack angles simultaneously. Radio discipline collapsed. The tactical frequency became a bedlam of voices. Targets called, hits reported, planes going down marked by their squadrons. Torpedo hits opened on Yamato's port side, below the armor belt where even 16 inches of angled steel could not reach. Each one tore a new flood path into the hull. She began to list. The list was worsening by degrees. Left uncorrected, the ship would roll onto her side and everyone aboard would die in the water. To correct it, the starboard engine room and boiler rooms would need to be counter-flooded. Seawater pumped in to balance the weight on the opposite side. The compartments in question were sealed and fully manned. The crews inside would not have time to evacuate. They were at their stations, fighting their ship as they had been ordered to do. Ariga gave the order. The valves opened. The compartments flooded. Several hundred men drowned inside them. The ship straightened. She had one working engine remaining. Her speed fell further. The battle continued for the survivors. The alternative was faster capsize. Those were the terms of the decision. The second and third waves arrived. Bombs fell on the superstructure, knocking out fire control directors, blowing men off their gun positions. More torpedoes, this time concentrated on the starboard side, the side she was listing away from, completing the geometry of capsizing the ship from beneath. Each hit accelerated the roll she could no longer correct. The guns kept firing. The ship was dying, and her guns kept firing. Somewhere in those final minutes, Ariga lashed himself to the binnacle at the anti-aircraft command station atop the bridge. He took rope and tied it around his own body and around the ship's fixed compass. He was not merely deciding to stay. He was ensuring that staying was not a decision that could be undone. That when the water came, no reflex would be enough to undo it. He made himself part of the ship. It was the most complete expression of resolve available to him, and he performed it without ceremony. At just after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Yamato was dead in the water. On the bridge, Vice Admiral Seiichi Ito gave the order for general evacuation. Then he moved through the surviving staff. He shook each man's hand. He said what he needed to say. Then he descended the ladder to his sea cabin, one deck below. The door closed. That was the last anyone saw of Seiichi Ito. Within 15 minutes, Yamato rolled completely to port. The ocean came over the rail. She turned upside down, the enormous keel breaking the surface for a moment, and then the aft magazines detonated. Hundreds of tons of propellant and shell went off simultaneously. The shockwave threw survivors already in the water. Men on ships miles away felt it in their chests. The mushroom cloud climbs 20,000 feet, visible from Kyushu, more than 100 miles away. It is 2:23 in the afternoon. Yoshida was inside when the ship rolled. He found a porthole in the bridge structure. He climbed through it as the hull came down around him and jumped into the water. The oil, the noise, the shock wave from the magazine. All of it hit him together. He was pulled from the East China Sea by the destroyer Fuyutsuki. He was 22 years old. 4 destroyers, Fuyutsuki, Yukikaze, Hatsushimo, and Susutsuki, were ordered to recover survivors. They pulled men from oil-slicked water throughout the remainder of the afternoon. Many were badly burned. Some were so coated in fuel oil they could not be identified. The sea around where Yamato went down was full of debris, floating bodies and the wreckage of what had been, 3 hours earlier, the most powerful battleship ever built. Of Yamato's 3,332 men, 2,498 were killed. Yahagi went down before her, taking hundreds of Hara's crew. 4 of the 8 destroyers were sunk. Total Japanese dead from the Tengo surface force, 3,665 men. American losses, 10 aircraft, 12 airmen. The mission achieved neither of its stated objectives. The beaching on Hagushi never happened. Task Force 58 never moved within range of a kamikaze strike. Micha had launched from a safe distance, recovered his planes, and sailed on. The decoy drew nothing in. Yamato died without once threatening the force that killed her. The 3,665 men who died in the East China Sea on April 7, 1945, did not die because the plan failed to work. They died because the plan could not have worked. The men who designed it knew this before they drafted it. The disparity, 3,665 to 12, is not a measure of Japanese cowardice or incompetence. Yamato's crew fought with everything they had until the ship rolled beneath their feet. The disparity measures something more categorical, the absolute dominance of carrier-based air power over surface warships operating without air cover. These men were sent into a battle they could not win, against a force they could not reach, to fulfill an order that had no rational strategic purpose from the moment it was conceived. They obeyed anyway. The surface navy never sortied again. Yamato lies today in approximately 1,120 feet of water in the East China Sea, roughly 180 miles southwest of Kyushu. She was found in 1985. The wreck lies in 2 sections, the forward hull and the stern, blown entirely free by the magazine detonation. Survey teams have confirmed the catastrophic internal destruction. The ship that was designed to withstand anything another surface vessel could fire at her was destroyed from the air. Not a single enemy surface gun participated in her sinking. The 9 gun barrels, 147 tons each, the largest ever mounted on a warship, are down there in the dark. In their entire operational life, they fired at enemy surface ships exactly once. They never sank one. She was commissioned on December 16, 1941. 9 days after Pearl Harbor proved that the aircraft carrier had replaced the battleship as the arbiter of naval power. She was built to dominate a kind of war that was already over before her keel was laid. The age of the battleship did not end in a glorious final surface engagement. It ended with a mushroom cloud over an empty sea, watched by men on carriers who never came close enough to be in any danger. 10 days after Vice Admiral Seiichi Ito descended that ladder and closed that door, his only son died in a kamikaze attack near Okinawa.